Most people picture dinosaur extinction like a light switch. One second you have dinosaurs, and in the next it's an empty world. But that's not how extinction works. Extinction isn't a dramatic moment where the last animal collapses and that's it. Extinction begins when a species can't reproduce. And that's why the real mystery isn't what hit the planet, the real mystery is this. How long can giants keep living after the planet stops supporting giants? Because the asteroid didn't only cause destruction, it caused something far more dangerous. It made Earth unreliable. Before the end of the Cretaceous, life ran on routines so dependable they felt permanent. Daylight returned, seasons rotated, plants regrew, rivers refilled, forests healed after storms. That reliability is what allowed huge animals to exist. If you weigh multiple tons, you can't live in a world where food sometimes just doesn't come back. You can't gamble on bad years. You need a planet that pays its bills on time. Dinosaurs were masters of that world, not because they were lucky, but because they were tuned to it, which is exactly why the final chapter is so brutal. The asteroid didn't just kill the dinosaurs, it snapped the routines dinosaurs depended on. Of course there was an impact, and yes, it was massive, and it changed Earth drastically. But focusing only on the impact is like blaming a blackout on the moment a power line falls. The power line matters, but what really matters is what happens next. Hospitals lose electricity, food spoils, communication fails, water systems stop working, people panic, and supply chains collapse. The falling line is the trigger, but the breakdown is the killer. That's how the dinosaur extinction should be understood. Not as one singular knockout punch, but as a chain reaction. Here's an uncomfortable thought. The post-impact world didn't need to be instantly unlivable to erase dinosaurs. It only needed to become unpredictable. Even a small partial reduction in sunlight can cripple ecosystems if it lasts long enough. Plants don't just need light, plants need light to rebuild. Growth, flowering, seeds, recovery after damage. You can survive a short shortage, but if recovery keeps getting interrupted, the entire system quietly starts shrinking. Not in a dramatic collapse per se, but it just stops being able to keep up. The world still looks alive, right up until it isn't. Think of an ecosystem like a machine that runs on sunlight. Plants capture energy, herbivores convert plants into muscle and movement, predators keep populations in check. When sunlight weakens, the machine doesn't explode. It starts running underpowered. Leaves get smaller, growth seasons shorten, new plants fail to replace old plants. And that creates a dangerous illusion. To a big animal, the forest still exists, but the forest is no longer producing enough. It's like standing in a grocery store where the shelves look half full, but the delivery trucks have stopped coming. Eventually, you don't run out of groceries, you run out of restock. That's the kind of crisis dinosaurs walked into. Dinosaurs are famous for size and for good reason. Size is power. Size is safety, dominance, and the reason a potential predator might think twice. But size has a hidden requirement. Volume. A multi-ton herbivore doesn't eat a lot, it eats constantly. It needs enormous quantities of plant matter every day, every week, and every month. So if plant productivity stops, just enough for long enough, size stops being an advantage. It becomes debt. A big animal can survive a brief shortage, but it can't survive a planet where the shortage keeps repeating. The asteroid didn't have to kill every dinosaur. It only had to push ecosystems below the threshold where big dinosaurs could keep paying the cost of being big. This is where extinction turns from drama into math. Even if some adult dinosaurs survived the chaos, they still needed to reproduce successfully. Eggs require stable conditions. Nesting requires a safe habitat. Hatchlings require predictable food and shelter. And most dinosaurs didn't mature instantly. Many would have needed years to reach breeding age. That means a population can look alive while it's already doomed. Because the adults are the last survivors of a pipeline that is broken. If a few breeding seasons fail in a row, you don't get a gradual decline, you get a cliff. Fewer hatchlings, then fewer juveniles, then fewer adults. Suddenly the population is old, and aging populations do not recover. That's extinction in real time. Not one last dramatic death, a missing generation. People love imagining the last survivors as apex hunters. It feels symptomatic. A lonely predator stalking through the ruins of the old world. But ecology is crueler than cinema. Predators are built on abundance. They require prey that can replace itself. So in a collapsing ecosystem, predators may look fine at first. There's scavenging, there are weakened animals, there are carcasses. For a brief period, it's almost easier to eat. But it's a trap, because carcasses don't reproduce. When prey populations shrink below replacement, predators don't adapt their way out. They crash. This is one of the most predictable patterns in nature. Predators are the last to go, and that's why they often look like survivors, until they vanish as well. So if some non-avian dinosaurs persisted for a while, it may not have been because they were the toughest. It may have been because they were in the right places and were small enough to get by on less. Some environments would have offered temporary shelter. Wetlands, for example, hold moisture and soften temperature swings. River corridors keep pockets of plant life alive longer. Dense forests can buffer wind and dust. In those places, survivors could have hung on. But hung on isn't the same as recover. A refuge is not a reset button. A refuge is a waiting room. And if the planet outside the refuge stays broken long enough, the refuge eventually fails too. Because refugees still depend on the wider world. Seed dispersal, plant regrowth, stable climate patterns, and functioning food webs. If those don't return, a refuge becomes a trap with a slightly longer timer. That's the tragedy. Survival doesn't equal recovery. So here's why people argue about dinosaur survival timelines. The fossil record doesn't capture every year. It captures snapshots. And the boundary between the Cretaceous and the Paleogene is like a photograph taken in the middle of a storm. A species can persist for years in small numbers and leave almost nothing behind. Especially large animals, because large animals are rare compared to small ones. So there's a real possibility that the last dinosaurs lingered longer than we can easily see. But there's also a huge trap. Sediments move. Erosion can rip older fossils out of older rock and drop them into younger layers. So sometimes younger dinosaur fossils aren't younger dinosaurs. They're older bones that got relocated. That's why claims that dinosaurs survived long after the extinction event are controversial. To prove it, you need extreme certainty that the fossil didn't move. And nature moves things all the time. So what do we do with that? We use the best available evidence and the logic of ecosystems. And the logic points to one brutal conclusion. Even if some dinosaurs lasted longer than the popular version of the story, they weren't rebuilding. They were running out of runway. When the world becomes unstable, certain traits become superpowers. Small body size, fast reproduction, flexible diet, mobility, ability to live in fragments. This is where mammals and birds enter the story, not as conquerors but as survivors. Mammals didn't defeat dinosaurs in a fair fight. They simply fit the new world better. They matured quickly, they could survive on scattered resources, they could hide, and they could switch diets. And birds, avian dinosaurs, had even more advantages. Flight means you could search wider areas for food. Small bodies require less energy. Some birds can survive on seeds and hardy foods when ecosystems are stripped down. Birds didn't survive because they were magical. They survived because they needed less and adapted faster. Here's the most honest answer you can give without selling a fantasy. A large portion of non-avian dinosaurs likely disappeared quickly, especially in the most severely affected regions. But not all. Some populations likely persisted through the initial disruption and lived in the aftermath, weeks, months, and possibly longer depending on local conditions. The key point is this: the real killing machine wasn't a single moment. It was sustained instability that prevented ecosystems from refilling and prevented dinosaur populations from reproducing at replacement levels. Once reproduction breaks, extinction is inevitable, even if adults remain alive for a time. Big animals depend on things staying steady and productive. When that stops, they don't have much room to hang on. They run out first. If you could actually watch the last years of non-avian dinosaurs, it probably wouldn't look like the documentaries. It wouldn't be a roaring T-Rex standing on a cliff. It would be smaller and less dramatic. A population living in a shrinking pocket of habitat. Fewer eggs, fewer hatchlings, more failed nests. A species still alive, but no longer sustainable. And then, one year, there aren't enough young. Then the next year, there are none. And that's how it ends. Not all at once, and not in some dramatic moment, just a population that can't keep going. The asteroid didn't just end dinosaurs, it ended the world that made dinosaurs possible. And that's why this story is more haunting than a simple impact equals extinction, because dinosaurs may have lived long enough to experience the aftermath. A world where familiar plants didn't return, where seasons didn't behave the same, where the rules that governed life stopped being reliable. A world that didn't kill them instantly, but it also never gave them a chance to recover. That's what extinction really is. Not death. Failure to continue. Until next time on Fossil Flicks, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this.